I need a mover. Councillor Greer and Councillor O'Brien for adjournment. All those in favor? That's carried. That concludes the public hearing portion of this evening. And now we move on to the March 4th regular meeting of Council. And I'd like an adoption of the minutes of the Council meeting held February 20th, 2019, minutes of the Special Council meeting held February 21st, 2019, and minutes of the Special Council meeting held February 25th, 2019. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Greer and Councillor Chandler. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? That's carried. And I need an approval of agenda. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the March 4th, 2019 Council meeting agenda be approved? Councillor Wilson and Councillor O'Brien. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. This evening we had 3 presentations, and our first is from Fire Chief Norris from the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department, and he'll present a presentation on the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department 2019 budget. And then after he's finished his budget review, he's going to leave us quite soon because the fire department has their meetings on Monday. But at this time, I just wanted to personally thank you. It was an honor to be present for the appreciation dinner with the Parksville Volunteer Fire Department on the weekend, and just looking at some of the slides and the amount of camaraderie and the hours that were totaled on that in some of the presentations is truly amazing, and thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present our proposed 2019 Fire Department budget. So I believe the budget the presentation package was given to you all. I did pass out the spending packages to you this evening, the ones that I emailed to you on the weekend. So we'll be going over the anticipated revenues, operating expenditures, where we have a comparison to 2018. I've broken out the administration portion of the budget in a chart for you because it's the largest portion of our budget, with the exception of the capital areas. I put in the RDN portion of the operating budget because we receive a large piece of revenue from the regional district from our contracts with the regional district. We'll look at the projects we've carried forward from 2018, mainly projects that are either in process or that we weren't able to complete in 2018. Got a few things to go over with you that are previously budgeted. They're already in the financial plan, but explanation for you as a new council. We have our new spending and our spending packages in the 5-year financial plan, expenditures that we previously budgeted out from 2020 to 2023, and minor capital and the capital for those 5 years, and a couple of other considerations, and then I'll be happy to answer questions. So revenues that are anticipated, we have the largest one is the Regional District Fire Service contract revenue, which is anticipated at $527,000. It could be a little bit more than that, but that's what the anticipated minimums are. We have a confined space rescue contract with the regional district also, as well as we have a confined space rescue agreement with our operations department. And then there are some other revenues that are tougher to anticipate, but we receive some revenue for fire reporting. The province pays us $3 for every fire report. We do road rescue on behalf of the Provincial Emergency Program and Emergency Management BC in certain areas up on Highway 19, which we are reimbursed for. It's not very nice revenue, but it is revenue nonetheless. And there's also, at times of rezoning on larger developments, especially multi-story buildings, we ask developers for contributions, and we occasionally receive contributions directed to the fire department, and then also sometimes we receive donations. So those are some of the other types of revenue that we might receive throughout the year. The remainder of the budget is funded out of the Municipal General Fund. So this is the breakdown of our operating revenues and expenditures, and you can see the green shaded area is the 2019 proposed budget. So the administration area there is $962,500. And then you see we have fire prevention, health and safety, recruiting and retention. Training is a large section in our budget. We have a separate operating budget for the training ground. Equipment maintenance budgets, that's for all of the pieces of equipment, things like turnout gear and radios and all sorts of all of our equipment, power tools, on and on and on. We have a vehicle maintenance budget. So we have 5 main pieces of fire apparatus, as well as the 3 utility vehicles, a trailer, and those all require licensing and maintenance throughout the year. Fuel. We have licensing for radio equipment through Industry Canada. You'll see the one I highlighted in there in yellow is the hydrant maintenance budget, which is shown in our budget, but we don't actually administer that budget. That's administered through the operations department. They're the ones, the utilities crew are the ones that actually do the service on the hydrants, so they actually set that budget themselves. We have a small equipment budget, which is what we buy turnout gear with. It's not the maintenance budget, it's what we purchase new turnout gear, coveralls, boots, helmets, saws, whatever it is that we need throughout the year, nozzles, hose, etc., etc. And then we have the buildings and grounds budget, so those are, that's where we keep the lights on at the fire station and do maintenance on things like overhead doors and exhaust extraction systems and HVAC and et cetera, et cetera. So you see that that totals about 1.4, just over 1.4 million. And then there's the minor capitals broken out down below, which we don't have any minor capital expenditures last year. So that'll account for a bit of the difference between the 2018 budget and the 2019 budget. Was we had a large minor capital project last year, which was our new SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus units. You also see there that the amortization has gone up because this year we will receive the new aerial ladder truck, and so we'll have to start showing amortization on that particular unit. So overall, the budget is a little bit lower than last year in the operating side. So this breaks out the administration portion of the operating budget, just so you have an idea in that large $900,000 portion of the budget where it's at. Salaries make up 54% of that. Benefits, 13% of that. Other indemnities, that is mostly the monies that are directed towards the volunteer members. So they receive certain honorariums throughout the year. So that's what that is. We have staff development in there. There's some computer-related budgets, utility services, supplies, and uniforms in there make up other, relatively significant areas of that. The one thing that I would note in our budget that's a little different than some of the other budgets is that where some departments, for instance, the IT department has a budget that covers most of the computers for the city and things like that. The computers and the software and the IT, but we actually have our own budget so that it's shown in our budget so that when we calculate the portions for the RDM and whatnot, that's included in those calculations, if that makes sense. So there's an overview of what this particular year's operating budget contribution looks like. It's likely to be slightly higher than that, the RDN's portion of it. If you look back at the slide on page, I should really get my glasses on here, on page 4 of the presentation where we looked at the operating revenues, and the anticipated revenues in 2018 were 527, but the actual amount received was 657,000. So it's likely that the contribution will be higher than that based on what our budget expenditures are. If you want to know how that's exactly calculated, you should talk to the Director of Finance. So projects carried forward from 2018. In the operating side, there was nothing. In the capital side, there are two things. So the aerial ladder replacement project is in progress. That project started in late 2017, and so the truck was ordered in late 2017. It was a 430-day build on the apparatus, so that spans over an entire year. So the truck is, in fact, just about ready to be received, and we should see it up here on our doorstep in about 5 weeks or so. So we're hoping at the end of this month, maybe next month, early next month, to receive that truck. The amount budgeted and that for 2018, which is carried forward, is $947,500, and the total budget for that project was $1.4 million. The rescue pumper replacement project, we were not able to get the RFP issued last year, and so we hope to be doing that early this year. That truck provided the RFP process went well, and we received the appropriate bids, and we have the appropriate budget and all those factors. We're hoping to order that, sometime in maybe June or somewhere. That would mean that project would likely carry over into 2020, and because we wouldn't likely receive the truck until then. So 2019 previously budgeted in the financial plan. So in the financial plan, we have the second fire rescue service technician in the financial plan. I think those were put in around the 2016 budget cycle. The salary and benefits package for that is $82,700 at full. That's at full salary, and then there's other considerations that make up the $92,000. So there's some casual backfill, some overtime, uniforms, professional development, those sorts of things. So, like I said, this one was previously
Chief,
identified.
if I could have a question from Councillor Greer, and then I have one as well.
Oh, okay. It's changed. Anyways, this fire technician number 2, that's a new position. And how many full-time firemen do you have now?
We have 4 paid staff, uniform staff, and we have 1 fire rescue technician currently. So that fire rescue technician was hired in 2017.
Right. So this is the second man you have.
It's the second fire rescue tech or firefighter position.
So altogether, that makes 6, isn't it? Is that right?
That would make 5.
5?
This would be 5.
Okay. Thank you.
And a follow-up? Thank
Yeah.
you. Just based on Councillor Greer's. Do you have anyone in the volunteer fire department that could fill that position at this point in time?
I believe it's likely that the last candidate came out of the fire department, and I believe that a candidate we would likely find a candidate suitable. That would come down to a hiring process, but I would imagine that we would have members that would qualify.
Thank you.
And then you'll see that in the capital budget, we also had previously budgeted in the financial plan for $20,000 in 2019, again in the capital budget. And then you'll see in a moment that when we go over the additional spending packages, that there's a little bit more money we're asking for there. So these are the new spending. This is the new spending and spending packages that is of note. Some of these are operating, and I'll know which ones are which. And some of them are included in the 3 spending packages I gave you because the values are of more significant dollars. So spending package number 1 is an operating budget package. This is for working uniforms, or what we call station uniforms. It's been several years now since we had a proper standardized jacket for the members, and so that's what the $12,000 spending package is. We have up to 44 members, and so that's why the value is at $12,000 based on the jacket that's been selected. We have a clothing allowance increase. Clothing allowance is the honorarium that the on-call members receive. The call volume has been going up, and therefore the pot of money that the on-call members split amongst themselves has not been being increased at the same rate, so the actual amount they receive per call is dropping fairly significantly. At one point it was up around the $18 to $20 mark, and now I think we're down to the $13, $14 mark. So this is just an adjustment, a more significant adjustment than normal to start to compensate for that a little bit. The RMS, which is a records management system, which we use, it's called FirePro. We're looking to add the shift scheduling module. One of the things we're looking at doing is taking our on-call members onto a shift cycle so that we're not calling as many in for incidents where we don't require 20 people. We require maybe 4 or 5 people. So we're looking at moving towards a shifting system. In order to do shifts, we have to be able to do schedules and scheduling, and something that our software provides is that. There's a computer hardware increase in the administration budget of $2,200 that was requested by the IT department. The training budget has been increased in total. This is over several different training types of training for a total of $5,300. That's really just due to the increasing costs of training. So course costs rise every year, and occasionally the number and type of courses and things we have to train for increases. So these costs that's one of the costs that is continuously going up. We have a $4,000 one-time budget item in there for a hose storage rack, and we have a nozzle replacement program going on now to standardize our nozzles and replace some older nozzles, and that's $4,500 over 2 years. So it's $4,500 in 2019, and then you'll see the same amount in the 2020 operating budget. In terms of the capital budget of new spending, the spending package number 2 is for the training ground, curbs and paving, roadways and driveways. You'll note that we completed the installation of the training tower this year, and it's with this particular, we received a rather shocking quote for the paving and curbing in the training ground, and which is reflected in this number here. We're hoping that we'll be able to work with the engineering department and possibly put this project, maybe tag it onto another capital road project so that the paving and curbing could get done at the same time, and thereby, if we're able to, reduce the cost, the overall cost of the project. But this is based on the quotes we've been given.
Councillor O'Brien.
There we go. Through the acting mayor, if I may, to Chief Norris. Regarding the spending package for the training ground paving is essentially, I've seen you fellows doing on the training and so forth. You put out a lot of water, which is a good thing, right? So, but the thing is that the surface you have is a permeable surface right now. and it somewhat takes the water away. I would hazard a guess that if you go on to pave that, the infrastructure underneath the paving section for the take away the storm, it would be classed as stormwater, and not sewer, but it would be classed as stormwater. There'd be quite a stormwater, either retention pond have to be built, or actually stormwater into the surrounding as well. So the paving, I understand what you're saying. Paving is darn expensive right now, but the thing is that as it is right now, when you have all that excess water, it's going through the gravel and it's draining down through into good old Mother Earth, which is kind of the target that we tend to do now on new areas. I'm suggesting that a hard surface, I'm not really sure that that's maybe a good, is there a reason that you want to go to a hard surface? Does it make training differently? But as I say, my concern is that the paving is going to be part of it, but all of that storm water's got to go somewhere, and it has to be directed, or else you're going to be flooding out. Well, you'll flood out your neighbor next door.
So we do have a site drainage plan. So in the industrial area where the training ground is located, there is no storm sewer network there. So on site, we do have a drainage swale that is, I'll say, engineered to handle quite a significant amount of water. We do flow a lot of water, but part of the plan is not to pave the entire site. It's to pave a roadway through the site and to have some containment around the training tower with curbing, so that we don't get erosion with the amount of water we flow around the footings and things of the tower, so that we can drive our vehicles in there. And frankly, when we're in there and we're running a lot of water, it's a big mud hole, and it becomes a bit of a nuisance from a cleanup point of view. And we should have, when we're operating our aerial ladder trucks and things, we should have a fairly stable base. So part of putting in a road network means putting in a road base, proper road base, which offers stability for those apparatus. The new aerial apparatus is 80,000 pounds and needs to be set up in a stable, safe way. Now, having said that, when I talk about curbing, that we're leaving areas open adjacent to the roads so that the water can run off, and there'll be a portion of that which will be collected and put into the drainage swale. One of the things that we're looking at for the site eventually, and we would configure the drainage for such, is to add some cistern capacity at some point, where the water would first go into a cistern and then any overflow would go into the drainage swale, so that we could actually have a pumping pit there too. So a body of water where we can practice drafting, instead of using hydrant pressurized water sources. So that's part of the development idea that we have for that location. So we have looked at that, and so we're looking at paving a road network and some paved area, but not the entire site, if that answers your question. The so that was for the paving, curbing, which we were hoping to do this year. And then the final spending package is similar to the one prior approved for 2019. It covers 2020 and 2021, which is $20,000 in each of those years, for a total of $40,000 to just for the ongoing development of the training ground, things like the cistern, the pumping pit, those sorts of props. We often change props or add small pieces or configurations to props, and that funding is earmarked to facilitate those types of additions. So as we look out beyond this year into the 2020 to 2023, the rest of the financial plan, we have a third fire rescue technician, which was when we initially put the fire rescue technicians in the budget. We looked at what we thought we were going to need over the next several years and where we're at now in terms of availability of firefighters, and several other factors. And in 2021, we have the third fire rescue technician. In terms of minor capital, in 2020, we have a budget line item for $100,000 to facilitate a fire services and facilities review. So this is things like the nature and composition of our fire service, the adequacy of our facilities, and the location of our facilities, so throughout our fire coverage area. And then in terms of the capital budget, we have we had a replacement for our photocopier in there last year, which we went and looked at our photocopier and determined that we thought it was going to last a few more years, and so we pushed it out a little bit.
Chief Norris, if I could just ask a question on the fire service and facilities review. When was the last?
The last one was done in the late 2000s, and Your Worship, I don't have the exact date, but I can get that for you. It was done in the late 2000s. I want to say somewhere around 2009, I think it was done. Possibly earlier than that.
Actually, then I have a follow-up. Does that affect our insurance rating on that too, by having that done?
The Fire Underwriter Service is actually just in the process of reevaluating the insurance ratings for the entire Vancouver Island. It hasn't been done for several years. There is a minimum amount of pumping capacity and personnel that we have to be able to put out there on a consistent basis in order to maintain our insurance rates the way they're set. So if those insurance rates were to fall, that could be a significant cost in terms of insurance. But I don't think there's a hazard of that at this point in time. But we certainly need to, the Fire Underwriters has a table that they call the Table of Effective Response, and it says how many for a certain type of building, a certain urban environments, how many personnel and how many fire apparatus in how much time you should be able to assemble. And one of the things we look at right now is that, you know, it's daytime in particular, it's very difficult for us to meet those. We have the fire apparatus for that, but staffing it's another issue. In terms of this is a look at the minor capital budget over the course of this 5-year financial plan, just so you can see it as a whole. So in terms of, you can see in 2020 we have the $100,000 for the station location, fire rescue service staffing and facility review. We have got, and that's the only, there's nothing in 2019. That's the only thing in 2020. In 2021, we have painting of the interior and exterior of the fire station. That's roughly 10 years after the renovation we did. Then we have in 2022, you'll see that it's spread out. You'll see in the capital budget, we have every 5 or 6 years we replace our utility vehicles, and this capital cost goes along with that in terms of outfitting the vehicles. So in this particular case, the vehicles, we just take the lighting and everything off the current ones and we put it into the new ones. And then every 10 years, so every 2 cycles, we replace the lighting packages and things. So in the 5 years from 22 to 22, so in 2027, you would see that a particular line item would be quite a bit more. So in terms of the capital budget, we have a fire hall. We have some budget set aside for renovation or addition to the fire station in 2023 and 2024. So 2023 is the initial phase of that. So that would be following on the heels of a fire service review, station location, station or facilities review. That would be for engineering and getting the project going. In 2024, which is just outside of this financial plan, you would see a more significant amount in order to actually do the construction part of the project. You see the utility vehicles, which are car 41, 42, 43. The reason I put an asterisk there, it was just to remind me that they used to be in, they'd be one in each year in 3 consecutive years. And we spoke to the previous manager of planning, or manager of budgets, and we determined that it was probably better to put them all into 1 year, because then we can do one RFP. We're not doing the same thing every year, which is, so we can just do it once. We may also be able to achieve a better unit price at the time if we do it that way. Plus, when our mechanics assemble the vehicles, they can just do them all at once instead of one every year. That way they'll all be done the same, and I think it's a more efficient use of everybody's time, maybe result in less dollars being spent there. You can see in 2019 we have the rescue pump, which is more rescue. That's the truck that I talked about earlier that we hope to replace this year, and that's what the CF stands for. It's just it was a carry forward into 2019. The aerial ladder, that's the budget that's remaining, and that's a carry forward. You'll see the photocopier, which was a re-budget, and we moved it into 2020, and we actually increased the replacement cycle from 5 years to 6 years because we think we can get some more time out of that. Extrication tools, we usually have every 5 to 7 years for some upgrading on our hydraulic extrication tools. New cars, tougher cars are mainly what we use them on. And so we may have to replace a tool or two occasionally. Then you'll see the training ground improvements, which I already spoke to, so there was $20,000 already budgeted for 2019, and the new $100,000 amount for the paving and curbing. And then in 2020, those were the two new amounts that I noted in the spending packages on the totals at the bottom there.
Can we just go back for 1 second?
Sure.
Thank you, Chief. So the addition to the fire hall, what does that look like? What is it anticipated to be?
Well, depending on, I mean, I'd like to go through the process of doing the station, the facilities fire service review first, to be honest. This we put in after the last renovation, so these budget items were put in quite a long time ago. We were looking at, will we need a second fire station at some point? Will we need to expand the facility we have? Our facility is quite small compared to most facilities the size of a community that we cover. The facility really has no room for expansion at this point in time unless we build additional bays. And there's additional issues there, like we need more property and things like that. So if it's going to stay in that location. So I think, we really need to go into the review of the facility first, but having said that, I think it would be if we didn't plan for another bay or two on this current facility, we wouldn't be doing, it would be we need to plan for that.
So just to follow up, because I've been around for a little while, as well as Councillor Greer, when we did the renovations prior and everything, we did not go to another floor on the fire hall, which probably should have. But there's also 2 flights of stairs to the meeting area and kitchen and everything, and you don't have any elevators or anything in the fire hall. That makes sense because all your able-bodied men and women can do those 2 flights of stairs, but sometimes your room is used for other organizations and everything as well. Have you ever thought of putting in some type of elevator facility?
I think, first and foremost, the fire station's a working fire station, and we're quite happy to work with community groups and things, but, I think the cost outweighs the benefit at this time for that particular use in the fire station. I think if we were looking at adding on, especially on the second floor, we'd be looking at dormitory space and things to get our on-call members closer, to facilitate possibly people being in the station at night, even work programs, work experience programs, or some type of housing for service type of program, those sorts of things, in order to improve the availability of people to respond to emergencies.
So one other follow-up. As our community grows and our fire department grows as well, do you foresee in your next, after 2023, 2025, that we should be looking at property for dormitory type use for on-call fire department, or something that's closer to the fire department, or do you foresee that a need for a second fire hall is more in need?
Well, I think for the layout of our fire protection area, it could be argued that 2 fire station model would be the best model. However, I have significant concerns that we wouldn't be able to staff a 2-station model. So I think, again, we have to, and this is one of the reasons why we've been really considering adding staff, because there are times when we don't have a lot of people available. The opportunities to have dormitory space in the fire stations to serve as, anything from housing people doing night shifts, and I'm talking about on-call people doing those things, or doing a work experience program, or having a trade, housing for service kind of deal going on. We can't run those programs. We couldn't even try to run those programs unless we had the facility to accommodate that. So, and there's other things, just, storage space and fitness space for the members, and things that might draw members into the station are all things that we consider, and administrative space and all those things. So a couple of other considerations that I thought were important to put in. I wanted to bring this new council up to speed on sort of what we were thinking in terms of staffing. And first and foremost, we are a on-call based composite fire service. So the majority of our members are volunteer on-call members, and we try to keep 44 of them, but we seem to hover consistently around the high 30s. We constantly have people coming in and going, but we are trying to aggressively recruit and retain our on-call members. It is a huge commitment. We're up at 520 emergency incidents a year. That's 1.5 incidents a day. That means the pager's going off, people are getting called in, and they're leaving their families, they're leaving work, they're leaving what they're doing, and it's a lot different than when it was 150 calls a year, and it was people were waiting for the pager to go off. We're starting to get into the territory of where it's going off several times a day sometimes. It went off 3 times yesterday, it's gone off once today, and it's busy now, so it can get in the way. It's also an issue for employers, because where it was maybe once or twice a week, employers were thinking about that this is maybe a way I can support the community, but I think employers also need their employees to be in their places of work, and if they're leaving 2 or 3 times a day, they're not really working for their employer anymore. They're working at the fire station, which is nice if employers can do that, but I don't think many of them can. So that's one of the things. The average volunteerism just generally is dropping off. People, for whatever reason that is, it's not just in the volunteer fire service, but it's across the board. And this is a big ask. This is a technical job. There's many different things people are expected to keep up to speed on. It's very difficult to do that. And the other thing that happens as people don't spend as long in the fire service because of these commitment levels, and so developing people to be supervisors in the fire service takes time. And we're getting down to a point where it's going to be, you know, we're not going to have enough time and experience and training into them to actually put them into supervisory roles. So this is where we'll have to look at some staffing. So it's our, you know, it's my opinion that we should have up to 4 fire rescue service technicians in place by 2024, which would allow us to have 2 people on duty during the day, probably on a 10 or an 11-hour shift, 7 days a week. That would give us at least a supervisor and a driver in the station, and somebody to work with on-call members and that sort of thing. We want to monitor our on-call staffing availability as we go forward. I think we want to budget every 3 to 4 years as part of our ongoing budgeting process, and work with council to determine what the right amount is and look at our statistics and where we're at and where we think we're going to be adding 2 or 3 staff members every decade going forward. I think we need to have a pragmatic approach instead of being caught and saying, well, all of a sudden we need 10 people. And, you know, every firefighter costs $100,000 and now, you know, you're into some really big dollars all at once. So I think we need to plan it out. Our trajectory certainly is to move towards more paid staff over the long term, unless something changes. But in terms of what's happening, people are moving here. We're seeing lots of construction right now, and these are just going to continue to put more pressure. The more people that are here, the more buildings with alarm systems and things in there, the more calls we're going to get, the more car accidents we're going to have, the more fires we're going to have, the more rescues we're going to have, all those sorts of things. Yeah.
Mr. Brewer?
Thank you, Your Worship. Are we still answering calls out on the highway on the bypass?
Yes, we do. We do the auto rescue from our. There is a chunk of the city out there but we do the rescue from the weigh scale to just short of the French Creek Bridge.
What are our obligations in answering car accidents? Do we answer all car accidents?
We answer, so throughout the fire protection area, we answer most accidents that are determined to be high velocity injury accidents. Most of those accidents come to us via the RCMP or via BC ambulance, because when there's a collision there can be the danger of fire, mostly the danger of entrapment, and that's where we answer those particular ones. For calls that are less severe, we only send our duty officer to them. So the on-call duty officer would go to those, and the on-call duty officer is generally one of the paid staff.
Because this must be the greater number of calls, just answering car accidents.
It's about 80 calls a year right now, give or take.
So what's that on a percentage basis of fire calls?
It would be just less than a fifth of our call volume.
Mm-hmm. Good, thanks.
And then, as I mentioned, I alluded to earlier, we're looking at some other measures for our on-call staff, so some shifting, scheduling, shifting towards a more paid call structure for that staff. And those are some of the things we're considering in our staffing plan. In terms of facilities, we're looking at things like office security right now. You can just walk in the front door of the fire hall unless we keep the door locked, and there's no barriers for our reception staff and whatnot. We're looking at our turnout gear room is now too small. We're overflowing out into the apparatus bay space. Our decontamination and turnout gear washing ability is what I would say is not adequate at this time, considering the new knowledge we have around the carcinogens and the cleaning necessary to keep firefighters safe and their gear clean. We absolutely don't have enough space for apparatus. We have no more space in the fire station at this time. Fitness space is taking up some of our apparatus space, storage and office space, and of course we don't have any dormitory space. So, and we'd also like to reconfigure the upstairs multi-purpose space so that the room was just more usable. It has a couple of posts in the middle of it that make it difficult to use for large training events. And then the last thing that I thought I would note is that, and this was the Director of Finance and I were talking about this, and that we would recommend that that Council consider setting up a developer contribution reserve fund. So when rezonings happen on certain types of rezoning, we request that developers make a contribution to the fire department based on the number of units they're requesting. And the purpose of that fund would be to when it's given on the basis of they're giving it because the fire department requested it, that be moved into a reserve fund so it was there and accounted for. Currently it just goes into general funds, and we may never see it. And so we would request that reserve fund be set up so that we could then offset some of these things when we had a budget item, like say for the training ground for paving. We could actually use those monies that we realized from the request at development to fund some of those projects instead of coming out of general tax dollars. And that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
So at this time, I'd like to, if there are any questions or comments from any members of the public in the gallery regarding tonight's fire department budget presentations. Really? Okay. Are there any questions or comments from council members? Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief, for coming in and making this presentation. It's very, very well put together. I had a couple of questions in regards to issues around Narcan and so on. Are you going to be going through a training regimen on that, and is there going to be a cost attached to that side of it for administration?
We currently have not done the Narcan training. It's not difficult training. You don't have to be certified to deliver it. There is BC Ambulance does provide a training program for use of handling of needles and sharps and things like that, and how to position folks. We do have some Narcan kits, but we're not currently training all the crews on it. We're not seeing a significant call. We actually saw, I would say 2 to 3 years ago, we saw a significant uptick in response to those, but we're not seeing those calls coming through from BC Ambulance. We do get them occasionally, overdoses, but we're not responding to a lot of them right now, and I don't know that additional piece of training is really required for us at this time. It's just one more thing to put into the cycle. Narcan's great for opioids. However, if we properly, it causes people to, opioids can cause people to go into respiratory arrest. If we manage their airway appropriately, we can, even without the administration of Narcan, we can usually wait a few minutes for the Narcan to arrive on the ambulance. And then, so it's really airway management is how we're handling it now.
Okay, I'll follow up as well. So as a follow-up too, I guess the other thing I would think would be just from the scenario with fentanyl and carfentanil being so dangerous to our members of the fire department. I guess that would be one of the biggest concerns would be to make sure that nobody's affected in that respect.
That's actually the reason we carry naloxone in our duty vehicles, is because if it is really for our members in case somebody was exposed to fentanyl or something like that, that we can administer. That's why we keep it, is really for the coverage of our own members more than anything. It is out there, but I think by practicing good personal, use of personal protective equipment and things like that, we can minimize that risk.
Do I have any other questions for the fire chief from council? Just a side note, I'm not with Councillor Chandler. I attended in the fall the health seminar, and that at the Parksville Community and Conference Center, and did the Narcan testing and have a kit, so that's more than available in the public, and that to go over and learn from. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we won't keep you.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council.
So our next presentation this evening is from our Director of Administrative Services, the Emergency Program Budget. And I think it will be Your Worship. Thank you.
So this is the final piece of the administration department. It's a big department, so we did the first few sections last budget meeting on the 25th. And maybe just to explain for the benefit of those in the audience and council members that haven't been through this before, the emergency planning budget is in many parts a shared budget with the Regional District of Nanaimo and the Town of Pelican Beach. So some of these items are a little bit uncertain because we're relying on the partners to go through their budgeting process as well. And so occasionally when items are not achieved or they need to be carried forward, it's sometimes because one of us is either dealing with a lot of emergencies, as the Regional District experienced last year with the forest fires and other things, flooding, or it's that one of the other partners doesn't agree to the budget item, so then we put it off and don't participate in that item for that particular time. So similar to the other formats, we will be going through the revenue and expenditures compared to last year's budget. We'll be looking at the budget expenditures for this year. We'll be looking at projects carried forward, new spending packages, new costs that we anticipate or think might come our way in the 2020 to 2023 period, and then any other items that are not currently in the budget. So as mentioned, the revenues for this program are essentially the 2/3. A lot of the items are shared a third between the three regional and local governments. So the revenues that you see are actually the contributions from the regional district and the town of Qualicum for the most part. So just comparing the emergency programs to the 2018 budget, you can see there that in the top part of the page is the revenues, and then in the lower part is the emergency program expenditures. We do have some items that are just Parksville specific, but the program is becoming more regional in nature just because when there is an actual emergency, there isn't capacity in any one of the organizations to deal with anything longer than one shift pretty much. So we work very closely with the partners on most items. So as we have been doing, oh, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, in the back.
Councillor O'Brien.
Through the acting mayor to Kiva. The question I have anyways is on the first page. Still underneath the revenue column, the 2018 budget was 76.6. The actuals received, since its revenues, were 42,000. And yet, in the 2019 budget, you're booking on a budget of 88,000 in revenue, which is a variance of 11,400. If in the past, in 2018, the budget was 76, we only received 42. Why would you be anticipating an increase in revenue from last year to this year?
That's a great question. If I may worship through you to Councillor O'Brien. As I mentioned, some of the time it's because of unforeseen circumstances that come up where we're hoping at the beginning of the year to do certain things, whether it be training events or upgrading equipment or something of that nature, and then an emergency happens, so sometimes the other partner isn't able to follow through with that item. So in this year, we actually have a couple of items that we think, just as an example, we have about $15,000 in the budget for storage at the Poliquin Beach Airport in an emergency, and we're fairly certain that that will come off the budget for this year just because of the capacity in all three governments. So that tends to happen most years, I would say. Last year and increasingly in recent years, we are experiencing more of the emergency situations that pull our staff away from some of the planned things that they are hoping to do. Last year, for example, we had extreme weather for a longer period of time. We had a tsunami warning, which was even kind of a false alarm, but it still took away a lot of time. So things like website updates or programs that the emergency program are hoping to achieve get pushed to the following year. So I can't think of one specific item, but I know that that's typically a common occurrence where they have great intentions of doing certain things and then they get pulled off to an emergency. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And if I may, as a follow-up too, last year there was our emergency service providers here, anyways, from Parksville, were called up into the parts of British Columbia to work and assist with the forest fire that were getting out of control and so forth. And so I understand with the previous presentation that there was some recovery of costs or a payment, I believe, from the province. Are those provincial recovery figures in this revenue budget? Is that part of what makes up the recovery that we actually received? It doesn't go into this column is what I'm getting at.
If I may, Your Worship, it depends on whose task number it is. So if the emergency is in our area, then we are able to submit what they call a task number, and we get reimbursed for all of the costs. So that would be staff time in an emergency operations center, or if we had to purchase a new backhoe or something to clear a landslide. But if the emergency originates in someone else's area, it just comes in and out as, it wouldn't be a budgeted amount, but it would come in and out basically as a recoverable. So, for example, if our emergency program coordinator went for a week to Terrace or somewhere, then the wages for that person is covered for a week, and we get reimbursed from Emergency Management BC. But the task number and the kind of revenue would actually show in Terrace's account. We just basically balance it out. So we still have to pay the person, but we get reimbursed for their wages for that week, and that would just go, it would be tracked, but it would go back into our general revenue.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
And that did happen quite a bit for both our volunteers and for our paid staff last year. So the total emergency program budget is shown here, and as we have done in other departments, just kind of showing the breakdown. We don't have a lot of staff in this department, but we have a lot of volunteers. And as our emergency program coordinator did a presentation recently to council, it's somewhere in the region of about $80,000 worth of in-kind support from those volunteers. They are very dedicated, similar to the fire department, although their qualifications are slightly different, of course, but they put in a lot of training and provide a lot of value to the community. We call on them anytime there's an evacuation, even if it's only, one or two families affected. It's a really great comfort for folks when they can come and have somebody, support them for the immediate period that they're not able to go back to their home. And so there are two new spending packages in this department. Just to remind council and for the benefit of folks in the audience, we do spending packages where the cost or value of the item is over $5,000, and it's a new item. So in this case, there's a hazard, risk, and vulnerability assessment. This is a pretty large research project that we've been able to benefit from the regional district's participation. They're the lead, and so they have a consultant who is trained in this type of work. They reach out to the stakeholders. There's been, I believe, 4 events already with all of the stakeholders from District 69. So the ambulance service, school district, police, first responders, BC Hydro, the province, basically anyone you can think of that you would need in an emergency. It includes financial institution representation, just a very wide range of folks from our community, and they are being consulted to determine what resources they have in the case of an emergency, and we have agreements and things that we work out in advance. And we are contributing $20,000 to this project to basically kind of piggyback on the larger hazard risk and vulnerability assessment for the region. If we were to do it ourselves, it would cost us about $120,000. But the region was successful in getting a grant to focus on this, primarily looking at increased risks because of climate change. And we were able to just add a little bit of funding, or hopefully we'll be able to add a little bit of funding in order to consult with our stakeholders. So, and broaden it out to a full hazard risk and vulnerability assessment, not just focused on climate. So it could be things like terrorism, fuel spills, and other items that aren't really climate or weather related. And then the second item is an emergency food supply. These are those kind of astronaut food that if we were to experience an emergency, we would probably have challenges feeding people if there wasn't power, or if we weren't able to access some of the buildings that we're usually able to access where kitchens are available. So this basically, the reason why a spending package was needed is we kind of lumped, we used to order them separately for 3 different departments, for fire operations and for City Hall. But when we grouped them together, which is more efficient for one person to do it rather than 3 folks, it was $11,000. So it triggers the requirement for a spending package. And there are additional details on the spending packages in your handouts, basically just kind of explaining the background on those. And we do not have any projects that are carried forward, which we do in some cases in other budgets, but there aren't any for this particular department. We don't have anything that we've put out to future years, although the item I mentioned before with the added storage capacity for major regional emergencies, that's probably one that you would see as a carry forward next year. I don't think we're going to get to that one this year. We don't have any known new expenditures for 2020 or 2023. But one item I did want to flag for council, we anticipate having a report come forward very soon that talks about our agreements. So as I mentioned, we work with the regional district and the town of Qualicum, and so we have agreements with those governments on various things like where an emergency operations center would be held, who does what in an emergency, and it's mostly based on if it's the City of Parksville's emergency, then we take control and the other folks are there to support us. And we also have an agreement between the parties in District 69 that funds an emergency coordinator position. So we have an individual who does all of the training and all of the coordination with the volunteers. So if somebody, if there's an emergency situation and somebody needs to be called, that person makes sure that the person who is going has the, the right training and qualifications. And that position is funded by the 3 governments, and we have an agreement that lays out the expenses, but all of the agreements are coming up for renewal or new renegotiation if that's what the governments would like. And one of the things that we want to put forward is a slightly different funding formula, because at the moment we believe the City of Parksville is taking on, just because of history, I guess we've always sort of done it, but we're not really billing the other partners for some of the things we do, such as the support we provide from communications, especially during the expo and during emergency events. We kind of tend to do a little bit more of that with our resources, partly because the other governments either don't have people in those roles, or they're dealing with other situations in their own areas. We also provide the things like janitorial costs for the room over at PCC that the volunteers use, and we provide the phone for the coordinator, just little administrative things, but they do add up, and so we're hoping to renegotiate a fairer share of some of those things. And then we also would like to put in some additional guidance for kind of more operational things that happen. So there's just a clearer direction for staff in non-emergency situations. So there will be some, hopefully some more beneficial costs coming our way, but there would be staff time as well in terms of negotiating those agreements. And we're looking at doing that next year. So at this point, that's the overview. If there's any questions, happy to try and address them.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the public in the gallery regarding tonight's budget presentations? Seeing none, do I have some from the council? Councillor Frass?
Through your worship to acting CAO, I'm just curious with the emergency food supply, what the plan is as those rations expire. Curious to know what you guys plan to do with them.
Yeah, that's a great question. If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Frass. I believe that the emergency program coordinator bought lunch for several of the first responders and essentially made them eat the leftover ones so that they were familiar with how they would taste. I did hear that the burrito wasn't too bad, although I don't think I would go for that one myself. But yeah, they do expire after a certain period of time, and we use them for training purposes to kind of show members of, they actually bring them with them to public events and show members of the public what they look like as well, and encourage members of the public to look into that for their own needs. I think the mac and cheese one would be one of my favorite ones, but yeah, we do our best to use them in an efficient way, but we also think that in an emergency, the expiration date would probably be kind of a recommendation as opposed to a hard line.
Councillor Chandler?
Thank you. Through your worship to acting CAO Kehler. Wondered have we over a period of time ever been able to get any kind of grant money for the emergency services program?
Yes, if I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Chandler, we are very successful with grants of late. So the pet trailer that we just acquired for this region was acquired last year through a grant. So the UBCM, which is the Union of BC Municipalities, has an ongoing emergency grant for smaller communities typically. So we have a couple of items we're hoping to achieve this year. One of them is supplies for group lodging. So what we try to do is all three of us will apply for different things, and then they become a regional resource if we're successful. So the City of Parksville is looking into the group lodging. The other item was something that just escapes me now. Oh, I think it was to do with tents and supplies for field situations where members have to be out, on site for a period of time. But there's certainly an annual intake for the UBCM process. It was $25,000 worth last year. I think it's a similar amount this year. We do get grants from other groups over the years. I don't know if you can remember any other ones, but yeah. I think we received either, it was more of like a discount rather than a grant, but we were able to get the shakeout cottage, shake cottage or something it's called, sponsored through the Canadian Insurance Association. I can't remember the correct name, but so the EPCs are able to leverage things for really cheap cost or low cost for a lot of the public events. And our expo has become a huge success, so they're able to again get donations of things here and there. I think we had 40 folks last year, and it was people were on wait lists to come to our expo, which was really quite cool, but does mean it's a lot of more work for. Oh yes, and actually it's a really good point from the manager of communications. We've moved it to September this year. It's usually in May, but we figured we could put it in September, and then the earthquake awareness and things happens in October, so it kind of follows on. And we have Fire Prevention Week around that time as well, so we kind of felt they all tied in together. And also it was a little bit that we needed the extra time to plan because there's so many people now that come and want to come to ours, so we're quite proud of that.
Any other questions from council? I have a couple. The emergency food supply, where would it be housed?
So it's currently housed in 3 different areas, but it would actually be housed here at City Hall. This is our main emergency operations center location. if the building is accessible and safe. And we actually have all of our equipment, all of our EOC supplies are actually right off to the side here. And we have another storage area in the admin area in a very packed closet. And we have some supplies stored in the PCC, but most of the food is actually in these two locations here at PCC. Yeah, we currently have them in the fire department operations, and here they're kind of scattered, but we would be probably putting them all together.
That answers one of my other questions on the operations center. Communications, I attended the volunteer appreciation last year, and there's quite a few radio enthusiasts that are part of that volunteer group. So that was really interesting to note as well. The September Expo, that'll be in Parksville this year. It was in Qualicum last year. So.
Yeah, I think we actually ran out of space in Parksville. We need a lot of parking area as well for the large, people usually bring the large equipment, like trucks and ambulances and those kinds of things. So the last few years it's been at the Civic Center in Qualicum, two years. We did it at the curling area, curling club maybe, and it was quite small. And so we try to have workshops as well with that event. So the Civic Center has the smaller areas and the very large hall, and then the parking a little bit bigger than anything we have. So.
Thank you very much. And our last presentation this evening, we welcome Manager of Communications and a presentation on the Communications 2019 Departmental Budget.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Thank you for the opportunity of presenting my budget. Compared to the fire department and others, this is a really simplified, tiny little budget, but I'm happy to present it. So as an overview, very similar to the others, an expenditure comparison to 2018. The money being spent or proposed to be spent in 2019. Projects carried forward. I am presenting for council consideration a new spending package. Other considerations not currently in the budget, and then two items that I wish to discuss with council that are communications responsibilities. So I have one line in my budget, and pretty much the variance is all salaries. Part of that is the spending package and my salary. That's a breakdown of the expenditures. The salaries and wages, benefits make up the biggest part, obviously. And then advertising, the communications, the 9% is advertising, things like the city news page, general publication advertising. I do a small volunteer appreciation campaign in April, and then also things like Survey Monkey, Constant Contact, we do an e-newsletter. So those are all things that are lumped into advertising. And that's pretty much that. I have no carry forwards. So for council consideration, I'm requesting to increase the communications assistant position from 2 days a week to 3 days a week. And by doing that, it triggers benefits. The salary increase would be $9,000 for the year, but at 2 days a week there are no benefits, so at 3 days a week it would trigger benefits the same as any other employee. At this time, and I don't see any change in the future, there is no backup for the communications function in administration. So as engagement opportunities, or our citizens expect enhanced engagement opportunities and public participation, I need some help to make that function more, more accessible to people. We now look after a series of websites. It's no longer just, and social media, it's no longer just the City of Parksville. It includes the Englishman River Water Service, emergency management, and also the fire department. So that's sort of grown considerably. And then we do, as you're aware, surveys, newsletters. We're trying to increase our presence on social media in a positive way. So that all takes time. So I have nothing else to be considered as part of the budget. A couple of items that I wanted to just bring to Council's attention that you might not be aware that Communications looks after, or at least one of the items. This is in the operations budget, but for some odd reason, it falls under Communications. And that is the city's goose management program. As you're probably aware, we've had a very lengthy program. I think we're getting close to being in the 10th year of managing the non-migratory resident goose population in the city of Parksville and region. And so there is an amount of $35,000 in the next 3 years. And we're just now beginning to ramp up that program. Adling will start in March. We just completed a fairly comprehensive population count. And although the numbers are going down, they're going down a lot more slowly than what we thought. I read today that there's 5.6 eggs per nest. So we'll get there. It's just going to take a couple more years. There are less nests, and the estuaries are beginning to recover, albeit slowly. It's interesting, the cold weather and the snow that we've had over the last few weeks has driven the geese into the estuaries. So now we're back to the same thing where they're destroying the carrot and the sedge. So, but we'll start the addling in March, and then do a molt count in the spring.
Councillor Greer.
So to move this along a little further, can we not have another call? I know people don't like to hear that, but if it's going to take a long time, why not do a call and get it over with?
We've done, if I may, Your Worship, we've done a series of harvests in 2016, 17, and 18. The hope is that eventually we won't have to do a harvest and it will just be addling and we can keep up with that. We work with the guardians of the Mid-Island estuaries, and they look after the permitting for the city of Parksville. That's where most of this $35,000 goes. And for the last couple of years, our harvests have been on First Nations land. The one that we did last year was with the Nanu's First Nations, and was a really phenomenal opportunity to work with them, because they're learning to use the geese as meat. 100% of the meat is used. They're learning how to do that all over again. So it was very rewarding. Unfortunately, there will have to be a harvest this year, and it will. There could be two. There could be one at Qualicum First Nation, and then there will be one at Nanu's First Nation.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Through the acting mayor to the manager of communications. If in your slide that's on display right now, the other communications responsibility, it would also appear to me that you also seem to somehow have been in charge of grant writing and grant research and everything like that, and you haven't included in here. And I think it's important that that is mentioned and council recognize that the part of your duties are also receiving grants and doing a lot of that research too. So the thing is that, you know, talking about your other responsibilities, I think you should actually, you know, hang that up on your display, because I know that you do a lot of work on that. So that's part of it. So when you say that you're very busy, I know you're busy at that as well.
Yeah, I just don't need any money for that.
Oh, well, okay. Well, you're doing it on some time on your salary, so that's great.
Yeah.
My only other comment, I would really like to know the social media thing, and with the Facebooks and so forth. Is this an ongoing? Is this part of the reason that you're looking for more help at this time? Because the Facebook and those types need constant administration duties to watch what's happening on that type of thing. Is it taking a lot of that time? Is that part of the cause for extra, or what?
No.
And if not, then do you feel that the social media activity that we do is absolutely necessary? It's a necessary part of this process of communication. Is that do we have to do it?
Worship? Yeah, I believe that's how people get their information. That's their expectation. Is through Facebook, is through Twitter. We just launched an Instagram account a couple of weeks ago. I think we only have 220 followers. My plan is to beat the Parksville Chamber of Commerce. And we're doing that because it's a positive, happy, fun way to be engaged in social media. But I do strongly believe that social media is how people expect to get their news. And that is how the radio stations pick up. They don't pick it up from our website. They pick it up from the Twitter feed. It's an evil necessity, I suspect.
Can I have, anyone else have any further questions? So on our website, does it have the Twitter and Instagram links or pages to them?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I'll make sure that I, add those so that your numbers can increase. Now, are there any questions or comments from any members of the public in the gallery regarding the communications budget presentations? You guys are getting off really, really easy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, our next is our delegation, who's been so very patiently waiting. And it is, and I apologize if I mispronounce, Tectonica Management, Zoning and Development Bylaw Amendment at 395 Island Highway East. And it's a presentation by Mr. Derby of Tectonica Management regarding the zoning amendment at 395 Island Highway East. And if you'd like to come up. And it's the little face button. If you could please speak into the mic, that way the rest of the people in the gallery and picking up on our television or our streaming video feed.
Perfect, thank you. I don't often get to use a microphone after 16 years in the military, so people say I speak loud enough. I'd like to just take a few minutes to introduce some of the background associated with my client's parcel at 395 Island Highway East. The parcel, it's a small corner parcel. It was formerly a Shell gas station. The gas station was demolished by Shell and the site remediated to commercial standards prior to sale. My client purchased the property in 2007. And tonight we're asking for council support to move forward to a public information session to discuss rezoning the property from its current gas station only zoning to a zoning that is harmonized with the balance of that side of the island highway. This parcel is unique on that side of the highway. It is the only parcel zoned for gas station. Every other parcel along the frontage is zoned CS1. And that zoning has caused us some challenge over the year. My client owns 375. The parcel adjacent. We have looked at approaching now 30 different development opportunities on that property since 2007. We've been well into development permit applications in 08 and 09. We prepared a multifamily option for that site last year. The greatest challenge that the site faces on an ongoing basis is when we engage prospective tenants in the process. As soon as there's a discussion about the split zoning, because we're treating both parcels as one, because they're both too small to work on independently, and when we bring up the issue of the split zoning and the need to rezone, the tenant prospect tends to disappear. Rezonings come with a certain level of uncertainty, even in sophisticated tenant groups like Wendy's or Tim Hortons, which have been to the table for us. They're not prepared to enter into letters of intent and then be patient and wait out a process to which there is obviously some variability and some uncertainty. We would like to see the zoning harmonized so that we do have an opportunity for our client to develop the property within the OCP and within the zoning that we're asking for. One of the great contributing factors is that Shell, serving in their own interest when they demolished the property and made it available for sale, they registered a covenant on the title that permits or prohibits the construction on the site of a gas station or accessory gas station uses. Ironically, the current zoning on the property only permits gas stations and accessory gas station uses. So this corner lot is effectively sterilized by the presence of those legal instruments. So if we can rezone and we can move into zoning that's consistent with the balance of the street, and it opens up a number of other approved uses that are consistent with the adjacent uses of the property and the OCP, we believe that it'll give us a greater opportunity to attract a tenant that will facilitate the development of the property. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions about the property or our history on the property.
Councillor O'Brien?
And through the acting mayor to, is it Bill? Yes, Bill. Thanks for coming in. I recognize your property, and you've inherited quite a quagmire. And it's of interest. I've been watching it through the years that I've lived here, which is a few now. Your intention is now, I understand you're just representing the owner here, so, but the thing is it to actually develop the property yourself or to sell? If you are successful in getting this rezoning, or is that just kind of up in the air at this point? Are you acting as a developer? Are you seeking a building, or do you have a vision for that property that you or your owner wants to do, or you just want to so that it's more viably attractive to a developer?
By way of background, I have a 12-year business relationship with this property owner. We represent them on this parcel and 6 others on the island, 4 in Nanaimo and 1 in Courtenay and the 1 in Parksville. And I can speak from some experience based on their conduct on Vancouver Island and their conduct with their properties in the Okanagan. They are a multi-generational real estate portfolio type agency. They buy property and hold property. And when they hold property, they redevelop or they develop property, and then they hold the property. So the intention is not to create a position where they can create the opportunity for sale. The intention is to create the opportunity to develop. And to that end, like I said, we're now approaching 30 different development options on the property. Most of those were around the idea of commercial pad buildings, standalone, nationally branded type. You think about a Wendy's, you think about a Tim Hortons, those type of uses. We went down the road and we looked at opportunities that included strip mall developments with or without multifamily. And then last year we looked at a 4-story mixed-use commercial residential proposal, invested a significant amount of time, effort, and money to prove out the concept doesn't work. And that included both properties. That was assuming we would build on both 375 and 395 Island Highway as a consolidated parcel. With a 4-story building with 3 stories of residential over a story of commercial, we couldn't generate a market value that even approached the cost of development, let alone turned any kind of a profit for the developer. Backgrounds included in the package we submitted, and those numbers were independently verified by quantity surveyors and professional appraisers. So we have some struggles with the property. More density didn't seem to be a solution. A little less density, more traditional highway-facing commercial retail developments still seems to be the best option, but we can't get a tenant to come to the table and sign a letter of intent without addressing the rezoning. Complicated answer, but I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Your request is most reasonable.
Do I have any other questions for the delegation? Well, I hope that you stay because you're coming right up on our agenda. Thank you very much. So next in our reports, and Mr. Russell, would you please give us background on the issue regarding the consideration of zoning and development bylaw amendment at 395 Island Highway East?
Mayor, Worship, I will be rather brief as I believe it's being covered by the proponent. So the application is proposing to amend the zoning bylaw from service station commercial CS4 to a highway commercial CS1 zone in order to align the zoning on the property with the rest of the properties on the block. The subject property is designated within the official community plan as mixed-use commercial. This designation is intended to allow some flexibility in the types of uses that may be considered. The designation encourages a general shift to a more mixed-use or multi-unit residential form of development, but does not preclude consideration of commercial applications where appropriate. And there's a lot of history on this property which is being covered, and I can certainly provide more detail, but essentially in a nutshell, that is it. The recommendations are as per the agenda.
Thank you. So at this time, do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation as presented in your agenda? Councillor Greer and Councillor Chandler. Are there any questions for staff or any further discussion on this? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Thank you. So part of that recommendation is prior to second reading, the applicant or owner of 395 host a public open house. So I look forward to seeing that at your earliest convenience. And reports. Mrs. Kehler, would you please give us background on the issue regarding 2019 parcel tax review panel?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a fairly bureaucratic process. We are required by the community charter to establish a parcel tax review panel. This report requests approval from council to set the date and time for that review panel. The purpose of the panel is to authenticate the 2019 parcel tax rolls for water, sewer, and regional parks. And there's also a requirement to amend the regional parks and trails parcel tax by increasing the $14 amount that's currently in bylaws from the regional district to $16 per parcel. There are some legal requirements for notice, which are outlined in the staff report. Essentially, 2 ads will be required. They're currently scheduled for April 2nd and April 9th. And there's an opportunity for folks who believe there are errors or omissions in the parcel tax roll to correct that before council. And recommendations are per the staff report.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that's in your package? Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Greer. Are there any questions for staff or any further discussion on the parcel tax rules? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Mrs. Kehler, you're up again. And would you give us background on the issue regarding unsightly property at 608 Willow Street?
Thank you, Your Worship. This property has been the subject of multiple complaints since September 2016 regarding the unsightly nature of the property. Specifically, there has been complaints that there's a large number of unlicensed vehicles on the property, including some general refuse and garbage accumulated on the property in contravention of the bylaw. The bylaw officers, more than one of them at this point, have been very heavily involved with the file over several years. What happened, previously this has come before council, and council was directed staff to enforce the bylaw, and it appeared that compliance had been achieved. However, it since turned out that many of the vehicles were just temporarily relocated and were then brought back to the property after the inspections were done. So we're back before council again, asking for direction to proceed with enforcement if the landowner is unable or unwilling to clean up the property within 10 days of today's meeting. So what happens in these cases is if somebody is not doesn't take action to clear the property, then the city does the work for them, and the costs are then applied to the person's property taxes if they're not paid by the end of this year. And recommendations are per the agenda. Just a follow-up note, if I may, the bylaw officers attended the site today at around 11:30 and indicated in their opinion the property does not yet comply, although they did want to recognize that the landowner had made significant efforts. They assessed that it was probably 80% complete in terms of the cleanup, but there's still a little bit more to go, and given the fact that we had essentially a relapse prior to that, they did still believe that the presentation tonight for council is warranted.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Greer and Councillor O'Brien. And can I have questions? Councillor Frass.
To staff through acting mayor, what when you talk about the cleanup to be completed, you say it's 80% there. What is remaining for them that they're asking for?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Frass. So 80%, sorry, is that?
80, yeah.
80, yes. So looking at the photographs, there are still a number of unlicensed vehicles. There were about 20 to begin with, and so I believe there's significantly less than that right now. I don't have an actual number, but it's several was what the officers indicated to me today. There's certainly, I have some photographs which I can pass around to council. Certainly a big improvement from the photos in your package. Maybe I'll just pass those around. But there is still a significant enough amount of garbage and items accumulated that we do continue to receive complaints. And so the officers at this point did, again, they did want to give some credit to the owner for the attempts at cleaning up the property, but it's an ongoing issue that we've been dealing with, and so they felt that hopefully, given the 10 days notice, they will actually complete the cleanup, but if not, we were hoping to have the authority from council to go ahead and do it ourselves and then basically bring the file to a close.
So if I can follow up there. So just let council know, I did go by this property this afternoon and spoke with the homeowner. I'm not sure if when I went by there today, if they had spoken to him, because it didn't seem like he had any contact with them. I was kind of surprised driving this property, seeing that it has complaints to be unsightly, that I was trying to see like what kind of complaints would I notice, and from the street there wasn't anything I could see, and he has a fairly long property. And it's not until you drive about halfway down the property that you can start to see some of what you're seeing in the pictures here. And it has been cleaned up significantly, and in speaking with the homeowner, he's made some serious efforts to it, and he mentioned that his vehicles are now insured, so that part of it has been complied with. The large majority of what these pictures are showing too, you need to be right on his property, at his house, and in fact walk around the side of his house to see it. So it's strange to me to think of how would somebody be complaining about an unsightly property that you need to be on the property to notice. So I'm not inclined to vote in favor of the recommendation that he gets the staff come to clean it up and fine him for it, the administration fee, for reasons being that he's, in my opinion, he's cleaned up the property. He has some hobbies like that he works with, whether it's with metal or some wood, and those are packed away in piles. The garbage that you see in some of the mess has been cleaned up. There's only a small little, trunk load to take to the dump left. And just because the nature of the privacy he has there, it's a fully fenced and treed area. So I thought I'd pass that along.
Councillor O'Brien.
For clarification, if I read the background information, it was actually brought up by the neighbors, and the neighbors in the area brought it up. So whether they're living adjacent to it, or whether they're, if they have a two-story house, maybe they have visible a sight view, anyways, into this property is what I read in the background here, and so I'm assuming that that's probably how they assumed. Otherwise, they'd be trespassing to find out that it was actually a unsightly property. So that's, I just read it, that it seemed to be from the neighbor's point of view. So I'm assuming they have a view point. So, but my other question was, if we give this individual warning, 10 days, it's a 10-day warning type of thing. Is that from the date that we pass this? Like as of tomorrow, it's 10 days, the clock is ticking for him to get it together, and if not, then on the 11th day, staff goes in to start a cleanup process. Is that correct?
If I may, Your Worship, through you to Councillor O'Brien, the 10 days is the legislative requirement, but in reality, the bylaw officers work very closely with the owners. This usually acts as an added incentive. I don't think we've ever gone in on the 11th day. We tend to work with them, and often there's leeway if they say, oh, it's going to be 4 more weeks or 3 more weeks. We usually need some time to actually acquire somebody to come and do the work. We don't usually have the capacity internally to do it, so we need to get a contractor to come in and clean up. So I would say it would be very surprising if it was on the 11th day. In speaking with the officers today, they did speak with him later in the afternoon. They were both there at 11. 2 of them were there at 11:30 this morning, but didn't speak with him on site with the owner. But they've since spoken with him this afternoon, and they have been working very closely with him. And I believe he's been expressing some gratitude for their tolerance, I guess, or understanding. But I think just given the length of time we've been dealing with the property and the fact that it's still not in compliance, the officers, you don't see very often, like a lot of these coming to council, because we don't usually have to. But given the fact that it's a recurring situation, they felt with the bylaw officer's experience that this was warranted. But it is up to council to decide whether or not to support enforcing the bylaw in that manner.
I think at this point it's important anyways that our bylaw enforcement officers have the directive anyways from council to proceed if necessary, but understanding that there is some leeway and they do want to work with the homeowner. Makes me feel a little bit better, but at the same time they do have a piece of paper that says if it's not complied with, it's going to. So that's fair enough for me. Thank you.
Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This has been an ongoing problem. I recall this several years ago, and over a course of time, it keeps coming back and coming back. I can't understand what he does with all the number of vehicles. There must be some very strict bylaw on how many vehicles you can have on one piece of property. Is he selling vehicles there, which would require a license, or what does he do with the vehicles?
For me, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Greer, I'm not aware of an infraction for business license requirements. I believe, as Councillor Fass alluded to, it's something that this person collects. When we thought things were remedied before, the vehicles were just moved to a friend's property temporarily and then taken back. So
he's played games with us before, I recall that, and I think if we don't set a pretty good precedent at this time, it'll only recur again. So I'm all for putting this motion through. Thanks.
Do I have any other questions from council? Can I ask a question through our acting CEO? Has the property owner been the same since September 2016 when the first unsightly complaints were reported?
Yes, I understand he has. It's the same name in the emails that I've seen.
Okay. I think all questions have been put forward for discussion. So everyone's quite clear that there's is this 10 working days or is this 10 days from tomorrow? That would be my only other question.
I believe in the legislation it's 10 days, which is usually 10 calendar days. It doesn't specify business days in any part of the legislation that I can think of. So it would be 10 days after the resolution is passed. But as I say, it's usually not that quick. And in speaking with the senior bylaw compliance officer today, he did indicate that, again, they gave credit for the actions that the owner has taken, and I got the impression they're working very closely with him to support him and tell him exactly what needs to happen for compliance to be determined from their perspective. And I can certainly provide feedback from council that it not be on the 11th day and that they work, again, continuing as they always do, to their end goal is to gain compliance. And I think in some situations we just need a little bit more incentive for people. We very rarely, it's too bad the Director of Finance isn't here, but I can't think of a number of times that we've actually had to put the costs to somebody's property taxes. They almost always comply when they realize that that's the way it's going to go.
Councillor Fraz?
I just want to reiterate to council too, with the photos that you're seeing, quite a few of these photos, if you were to see where the garbage was, there is no line of sight from any other properties or houses on it. They're up against a treed and fence line. So there's one picture out in here where you can see in front of his workshop where you would expect to have some mess as he's working on projects, but the one where it's showing the wood pile or the camper trailer in there, it's only visible from his house in his backyard. You can see that there's a tree line behind there. It was quite an effort that he's put through cleaning this place up, and it seemed that he was under the impression that he was to have a meeting with bylaw last week, that they were going to come by and see the place. So he put forward all that effort, and he didn't seem to really know where this was going from here. So I always like to look at both sides of the story. I know we've seen unsightly properties before where it was warranted, because if you were to drive by, I think anyone would be able to see that kind of issue. But this one, I don't think unless you go through some great effort to find this kind of a mess when it is in this kind of situation, that you would notice it. And if he has hobbies of woodworking and metalworking, there's going to be times when he's going to be using that space. So if it's a neighbor dispute that we're getting in the middle of because they don't like what the neighbor's doing, one neighbor complains, the other neighbor doesn't, or however that situation develops, I think we have the potential of sometimes getting in the middle of these kind of things, particularly if this complaint is only coming from one individual and not from multiple sources. So that I don't know. Maybe we can ask staff if it's been an ongoing issue over the years, how many complaints or different individuals have been complaining of this.
Acting CIO.
If I may, Your Worship, the report alludes to various complaints and various complainants. We wouldn't typically put in a report the number, but we could discuss that with council offline. And as I say, usually we would not be, we deal with many unsightlies, hundreds a year, and I think there's usually one or two that come before council. So it's definitely not something that we take lightly. It's usually something that happens, it comes before council when we've really gotten to a point where there's numbers of people calling, and we're trying to complete the enforcement.
Councillor Wilson, and then Councillor Fraz, and then Councillor Greer.
Thank you. Through the acting mayor, to the CAO, are there any possible fire issues or noise issues accompanying this?
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor Wilson, I'm not familiar specifically with any of those complaints. We would typically, if there were issues related to fire, we would typically notify the fire department. I did notice in the photographs there are some like oil tanks and things of that nature, but from what I'm aware of with this particular complaint, this is solely on the unsightly at this point.
Councillor Frass?
I guess at this time, I'd like to ask that we table this until a future time, so perhaps give them a little bit more time to, for bylaw to interact with them, and I don't think that this is something we should move forward on this point.
I still need a vote for a table.
If I may, we have the motion on the floor to, for first and second, so we could either refer it back to staff with no further discussion, and we could bring it back to, it would probably come back to the next meeting, or did you want to specify a date to postpone it to? Refer it back? Okay, we'll just not conclude the vote and take it back to the March 18th meeting.
Thank you. So that moves us on to bylaws this evening. And this is a first reading on zoning and development amendment bylaw 2019 number 2000.124 at 395 Island Highway East. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that zoning and development amendment bylaw 2019 number 2000.124 be read a first time?
So moved.
Councillor Greer and Councillor Frass. Do I have any other comments to be made? All those in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Our other bylaw this evening for three readings, Regional Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Amendment Bylaw number 2019, number 1425.4, a bylaw to amend Regional Parks and Trails Parcel Tax Bylaw 2007, number 1425. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Which now brings us on to new business. And I think I will start at my right, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Through the acting mayor, I'd like to make two notices of motion. The first being the Oceanside Community Makerspace Society grant, that council approve a one-time grant from the 2019 council grants budget in the amount of $2,500 for the Oceanside Community Makerspace Society. The second notice of motion is for the Oceanside Community Arts Council grant for the Soft Shore Summer Installation. This is a one-time grant that council approved a $5,000 one-time grant from the 2019 council grant budget for the OCAC to support the 2019 Soft Shore Summer Installation Project at the McMillan Arts Center, and that funds be forwarded to the OCAC before April 30th, 2019.
Just a clarification. Did you give notice of motion to staff, and is that going to be able to be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yes, it will be.
Anything else? Councillor Greer.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is to do with the cancellation of a budget meeting date, that the proposed budget meeting scheduled for Thursday, April 11th be canceled, and an alternative special council meeting be scheduled after the April 17th budget meeting if required.
And staff has that as well? Thank
Yes.
you. Anything else, Councillor Greer?
That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Frass, do you have any new business? Councillor O'Brien.
Thank you. And through the acting mayor, I would like to present this notice of motion, please. That staff be directed to present a report to council outlining the costs and operational implications of installing seasonal beach volleyball nets at the sand courts in the community park, with the intent the nets remain in place during beach volleyball season each year. And yes, I have already presented this to the acting CAO, Kehler. Thank you.
Anything else?
I just do have something else. I would like to present another notice of motion, please. That staff be directed to review bylaw 1472, which covers council remuneration and expenses, with the intent of providing council with options to consider with respect to remuneration and expense rates that are reflective of the increased demand on councillors' time, more complex responsibilities, and the evolving role of local government elected officials in a small-sized municipality with 12,000 to 20,000 people. And yes, I have provided this information to the acting CAO, Kehler. Thank you.
Councillor Chandler.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just a motion from a notice of motion that I put through last during the Bolinas event, and it was, I've got to admit, it was a really great event that we were out there with the different delegations coming forward in front of us. I thought the students there do a wonderful job and come up with some really interesting things to focus on. So one thing that kind of struck me was the opportunity to give them a bit more say or more info back to us on what students really care about and what they want to deal with. Some things like the plastic bag ban, items like that. Not so much about the ban itself, but just about what are the options and what other things can they suggest as the next generation. So that's what I wanted to do. I would like to read this one out now, so that staff be directed to invite Bolinas secondary school students to attend the council meeting in September of 2019 to provide comment to council on current municipal issues.
You have a seconder in Councillor Frass, who's the liaison to our youth. Do we have any questions from councillors? I think it's a very awesome opportunity. Today I saw in the communications from Bolinas the avatars for the science and guest speakers at the technology conference, and I think that's just absolutely flippin' amazing. So call the question. Everyone in favor? Perfect. That is carried. And now, any other comments or questions or debates, discussion from councillors? Then we are going into special business, and do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation pursuant to section 91C and I of the Community Charter? Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to labor and the receipt of advice subject to solicitor-client privileged. Moved by Councillor Greer and seconded by Councillor Wilson. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we will take a 10-minute recess prior to going into in-camera. Thank you. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending. This was my first time in the mayor's chair. You made it very easy, so thank you, and have a good evening.